Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. Happy Liberian Independence Day weekend. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. The music you heard from the beginning, Happy Independence Day, is by our friend Amuchi Levin. The kid is just good, man, and he's in Monrovia. Ansu Dualu, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Ansu is my guest tonight, and our topic is the guide to picking Liberia's next president.
How you
Mr.
doing,
Dualu,
buddy? Yes, sir.
welcome.
How you doing? Thank you.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm glad to be here. Happy Independence Day to everybody, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
You are loud and clear, and happy Independence Day to you. This is our Independence Day weekend. We understand there are a lot of festivities going on. We want to devote this time to talk about leadership in Liberia. The question of leadership is something that continues to be in our discussion. Some people believe that Liberia's problem is the issue of leadership. And when we say leadership, the captain of our ship primarily is the president of the Republic of Liberia. Liberia has a history in the Guinness Book of Record of the most fraudulent election, or the most fraudulent way of picking a president. And that was during the time of CDB King. Also, Liberia has the history where the voters cry, "You kill mama, you kill my pa, I will vote for you. You kill me, my spirit will vote for you." Some of the issues that have come up elections after elections, the way we pick the president, we look for something like who the international community trusts. Another issue is who has the country at heart. Those have been the issues that we've been voting on. Somebody have followed Liberian election and say, the way we picking our president, maybe that's where the problem is. So he has come up with a guide to picking the next president of Liberia. That person is my guest tonight, Ansu Opa Dualu. He has written an article entitled "The Guide to Picking Liberia's Next President." I read that and it was very intriguing. I decided to invite Ansu to talk to him what this is all about. Once again, we want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. My guest Ansu is here tonight so we can talk about his article. Ansu, once again, we are glad to have you.
Thank you so much, man, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. Hopefully, we've come a long way from Charles D.B. King's days, and I think it'll be a lot more difficult now for anybody to replicate what Charles D.B. King did. But one thing that really bothered me over the last 10 years or so is that we in the diaspora, we are now shouldering our fair share, kind of finding a solution on how to select leadership in the country. And this is where my focus came in. And this is why I wrote this article. I'm actually encouraging people, you can Google the article for yourself. It's all over Facebook. Front Page Africa carried the article. Nordic Liberia took the article. It's all over the place, Data Observer. So Google the article, read for yourself. Let's have a conversation about Liberia.
Thank you. So, Mr. Dualu, you wrote this article. I read it. I know not everybody read this article, but you say a guide to picking Liberia's next president. For those who have not read the article, just give us a summary and why is it important that you talk about this. And if you can adjust your camera a little bit, your head is.
I just have to lean back a little bit, but let me just say this.
Right.
Before I even begin to give you a summary on the guide to this paper, I want people to fully understand how we define leadership in Liberia. Okay, the issue of leadership has to be defined. Now, I'm going to try and put this in a way that we all can move forward and have a conversation about this. I'll give you an example. If I am a manager at a Burger King, or if I'm a manager at a Dualu store in real life, that leadership is different from the leadership that is required in NPA. It's different from the leadership that is required at a fishery, at transport, etc. So there are different degrees of leadership. Now, the leadership that I'm talking about is a leadership that runs the country, not just the president, even though primarily I focus on the president, but I'm talking about the higher echelon of government in Liberia. So the focus on this will be in the higher echelon of government, especially the president. But let me say this. The leader that runs the country has three tasks that he must possess and he must fully understand when he's coming to run the country. Number one, we can talk about all the preparation, but he should come with a vision. And that vision should be first, immediately. Economic revitalization in the country should be part of his vision. And that leader must understand that. That leader must understand his leadership trait has to incorporate the social and economic mobility of the country. And third, that leader must understand we're talking about the societal issue in terms of security of the country. So that leader must understand those little tenets of leadership. Now, we have to be very careful here. There are certain pedigree that a person must acquire to run a country. It is okay to say you kill my mind, you kill my power. But the issue of running a country, in the very first line in the article is a leader must understand things tenfold. I'm paraphrasing here, but the reason why I came up with that particular initial sentence in the article is for this reason. He has to be an economist. He has to be a lawyer, a philosopher, an environmentalist. It doesn't mean go get a degree now. Let's make that distinction first for that people understand this. I'm not saying you should go get a degree in this field, but you should be a well-rounded individual that understands the way the modern world works. It is crucially important that you find a leader that understands not just the world, but he must have a relatable understanding to our issues in Liberia. We cannot continue to have the international community picking our leadership for us because they're not going to cater to the Liberian populace. They're going to cater to the people, their handlers in the West. So we have to understand that. We have to focus on the leadership that understand the socio-economic plight in the country, that understand the security and social mobility of the country, that understand the security issues of the country, and he is able to articulate that using his own vision and not somebody else's. So there are several steps that are listed in the article, and I believe as we go along, we're going to speak about them as well.
And my question there was, why is it important that you tell us this?
It is important because I believe most of our people back home do not understand the essence of leadership. It is so important that because our people continue to vote based on superficial issues that does not contribute towards the achievement of the tenets of leadership. So let me give you an example. I will tell you this, and I'm not using this to downplay anybody. I'm using this for the elevation of Liberia. So I don't want people to take this into other contexts because I want us to have a conversation tonight.
Right.
The people of Nima County continuously re-elect Prince Johnson as a leader. They do that because according to them, he was their protector. That is a bare measurement for a leadership role in Liberia or anywhere else in the world. He protects you. You can reward him by appreciating him, not giving him a leadership position. For example, people elected George Weah because they said the man got the country at heart. Now, the question that arises from that is, what has President Weah run in the past? Has he run in an organization? Does he understand what is required to succeed as a leader? What are the tenets of leadership? I'm not talking about formal education. I'm talking about running organizations that you understand the intricacies of leadership. So there are measures. The reason for writing the paper is to push this narrative to our people. Don't take my word for it. But these are things that you have to see in the person before he or she can become your leader. If you don't see these things, they cannot be your leader because they will not succeed.
Thank you. When I was in college, before you write a paper, they say establish credibility. So what qualifies you to tell us about this?
Excellent. Well, life experiences, that's number one. It's number one in everything. But I'll give you, because formally, people want to know, what school you went to, what experiences you had. My training entirely has been about leadership. Like I'm a finance guy, but we're having an MBA as well. But I'm also a certificated. I'm John Maxwell. I'm a certificate leadership counselor. Zig Ziglar, some of the best leaders out there. I've read a bunch of leadership books. I published articles on leadership. So in this field, and besides that, I also understand the Liberian dynamics and how that goes into it. So not that I'm an expert, but these are recommendations based on experiences and based on expert advice from my end, because I have certification in that field to say, okay, this is what leadership should look like. And I have an experience personally working in the fields of leadership for the last almost 20 years.
Thank you. And I too feel that this topic is very important that we discuss it. And I want to remind our audience and our listeners, even those who will watch this show later, that this is a conversation we all want to have. We're having a different show, and the question came up as to who is the best Liberian president. And so the first struggle we had was, how do we define best? Okay. Well, so how do we do all these things? So leadership, presidency is very, very important. Every time we're voting, what is it that we're voting on? But before we get into the crush of our topic tonight, you've written other articles, because I follow you. Mm-hmm. You've written other articles, and I would name them. One of these is that common sense economics for Liberia, if I'm paraphrasing that. You also have leveraging Liberia's resources, I think, to obtain the pro-poor agenda, something along those lines. And you've written a guide to raising Liberia's budget from its current state to $1 billion in 5 or 10 years. Briefly, just come through those 3 articles, what they are about and why you've decided to write them. Because it's like, to me, when I kind of follow you, it's like you are always thinking about Liberia and finding some innovative way in how to enhance these things. So tell me about those articles. Let's start with the common sense.
Common sense economics was written simply because out of frustration. I was sitting at work one day, and at the time we had an exchange rate close to $200 for every US dollar. And the inflation rate was just ridiculous in the country. Literally, the entire country was falling apart. And the reason for that initial article was to give recommendations. Now, people have to understand, you don't have to be an expert to put forth something. But if you have some preparation in the field, you can put forth this. Like I said, my training is in finance and economics. I know the field quite well, and I worked in the field close to 20 years. That doesn't say somebody else cannot come out and give a recommendation. I wrote this paper as a guide, almost initially as a guide to say, listen, people in government, there are a bunch of books out there, but sometimes because maybe people don't want to read all these books that the experts will read, this is how I intentionally made this article 20, 30 minute reads, so people can pick it up and find solutions in it. There are in the common sense economic, there are about 30 solutions to change the economy in Liberia and how to improve the conditions. In fact, one of the articles, leveraging Liberian resources to lift the pro-poor agenda, and I give recommendations how we can create 100,000 jobs in the next 1 to 2 years. They are out there. I want people to take a look at them. I'm not saying it's perfect, but give me recommendations. Ansu, this is wrong. It cannot be done. Let's talk about it. Let's find a solution. It is okay to criticize what's happening in the country, but it's also important that we provide solutions to the government and those that are in power. So listen, these are ways we can run the operations in the country. So I will give you the most recent article that I wrote. It's called A Guide to Increase Liberia's $500 million budget to over $2 billion in 10 years. And I give you step by step how you can get to $2 billion plus. We're more than $2 million without being very conservative. Now, people may go up, and I want people to read these papers. Come out and say, oh, Ansu, this is wrong. This is not right. Let's talk about it. I'm not insinuating that I know everything. But what we are saying is we have to find solutions, actually indigenous solutions to our indigenous problems. Because sometimes, look, you can take a model from Boston, Massachusetts, and it can work perfectly here. That model may not work in Sanlo County. However, you can use the platform of that model to tweak it to the Sanlo conditions, and it will still work. It becomes indigenized to Sanlo's condition. And that's the intent of some of these articles.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are discussing Ansu's article, which is A Guide to Picking Liberia's Next President. This is very important because 2023, we're going to be picking our next president. Ansu is giving us a guide here. So the discussion here tonight is not to look at Ansu as this know-it-all expert who's going to provide all the solutions, but this is the beginning of a discussion so that we can look at selecting president a little differently than what we've been using. That's what I'm thinking. And so let's come to the article. And I read the article a couple of times. You started the article by saying we don't have that never vote for anybody who does not tell you his or her plans and how he's going to achieve that. That's what you started with.
Yeah.
And when I look back for the few times I follow our elections, I don't think we have a history of anybody telling us their plans and how they're going to achieve them. What's the problem here?
Yeah, see, this is the reason for the article. One of the things that we who have been fortunate to be put in position where we can look back on the country and say, listen, I have learned a little bit, and this is what I'm recommending. One thing we do in Liberia, they're not just from the presidency level, but all the way down to the representative level. We elect people without them telling us what to do. The reason for this is we have to tell our people. The person must come to you. The issue of debate is crucial. The issue of a vision and the person that is proposing that vision, can he or she articulate that vision, is important. So one of the reasons why I put that disclaimer on the very top, do not, under any circumstance. Now, there are two things that were said in that disclaimer. The first thing was, Do not judge anybody with a singular thing out of this article, because it's a bunch of things. I want you to take a look at it holistically. So judge a person in its entirety with this article. And secondly, do not vote for anybody or even listen to them if they're not going to tell you how they're going to achieve their goals, what's their vision, and most importantly, how they're going to achieve that vision. So the goal is, you have to tell me. I'll give you an example. Back in 2017, before President Weah came to power, every time there was a debate, President Weah either left the country, either the man going this way. This is an insult to the people. And our goal now is to make sure we don't make those mistakes again. It's not just for President Weah, for anybody else going forward. I listened to Honorable Cummings, I believe, maybe a couple of months ago, and he said, listen, I can get Liberia budget to $1 billion. Great idea. Tell me how. Tell me how. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, my thing is, I'll pull out how you can get it there. And I give you economic reasons how you can get it there. Step by step, how you can get it there. I want Mr. Cummings to come and tell me, Honorable Cummings, we have a $500 million budget. We have a tax base that is dwindling. We have no foreign direct investment into the country. We are literally reliant on foreigners to give us money in the country. How can you really get this money to where you say you can get this money? What are the mechanisms you're going to use? What are the institutions you're going to build? Let it take it. It shouldn't be somebody else's vision. It has to be that individual who's going to actualize this. It's going to be his vision. It must be his vision. If he cannot articulate that, don't vote for him.
Mr. Dualu, you listed several measures in that article, and I will go through a few of them.
Right.
Let me kind of put on the screen, trying to kind of summarize them. One of the things you said, the office is entirely reserved for the best and the brightest among us, the very people with the aptitude, intellect, preparedness, and eagerness to actualize our national vision. You also said it requires, the office of the president requires you to be a legal scholar, a philosopher, a social and developmental economist, a diplomat, and environmentalist. In essence, you must be well-read, a well-rounded individual, and you continue, someone who will articulate those views in a relatable manner. Again, this is what you said. The presidency is not a place for a flunky. He or she must fully understand the functioning of every agency and the capabilities of those he appoints to lead and execute his vision. The president must be far-sighted enough to understand the consequences of his decision and the burdens they bring to the country. The president, someone being married to the same person and having all your kids by one person, can tell you a lot about a person's character. Can they withstand adversities in a small unit such as the family? And you went on and on, because you said, have that person developed their family unit and societal skills enough to be able to lead a unit as big as the nation. Examine his life choices and the decision he has made up to date. Do not take anything for granted. And you describe the president as our captain. You say our captain must believe in the possibilities of Liberia more than anyone else. He or she should be able to convincingly articulate and present plausible solutions to Liberia's present problems with relatable understanding. How realistic is this thing, Mr. Dualu?
Oh, very realistic. There are countless Liberians out there that fit that mold. But here's the thing. Most Liberians will not vote for them because, quote unquote, the man hasn't or the woman hasn't been here with us long enough. People have to understand, our country is a Christian nation. And going back to the Bible, sometimes say Moses went into Egypt to get prepared to come and lead Israel. There is a reason why people leave the country sometimes, because you cannot fully actualize in Liberia in many instances. In fact, I could have been a wheelbarrow boy in Liberia if I didn't come to this people country. So people leave to be able to come back. The reason for these standards, I have to say this. If you don't set standards for opposition, and that position is occupied by anybody off the street, in most instances, the job duties of that position are not going to be executed because people don't know. Do you know why there are interviews? Do you know why there are degree requirements for certain positions and experience requirements? The reasoning behind that is they want to make sure that you have the foundation of preparedness to be able to occupy that space and produce results in that capacity. The presidency is not for flunkies. This is what I mean. Look, people spend their entire lives preparing for a position. Over those years, I'll give you an example. In Liberia, if XYZ person becomes a president today, he goes and appoints his friend who will play marble on the tree as deputy minister. The saying is the man will learn on the job. You can't run an organization that way. So we have to say to our people, there are certain tenets of leadership that you must possess. You have to acquire certain socio-economic standing to occupy certain positions. There is a reason for that. Look, I was listening to Vani Saki a few days ago, and Vani said, his grandfather used to say this to him. His mother, the presidency is not for poor men. I'm simplifying here. It doesn't mean, in fact, I mentioned that in the article, it doesn't mean you have to be rich to occupy the position. The position that was being made is you have to achieve certain socio-economic standing. Poor man cannot go to the presidency. The reason being is, in many instances, he has not developed his capacity enough to be able to occupy such an executive position. Because by the time you get to that level, you should have achieved certain things in life that is quantifiable, that is above the average. This is not an average position. This position can make or break a country. You cannot just put anybody there. This is why we must set stringent requirements for the presidency. And that's why we keep stressing this. It is not anywhere. Even the position of representative. Sometimes it baffles me, some of the people that get elected to this position. You got to go to the legislature on a Tuesday or Thursday in Liberia. You will cry for your country. Some of these guys are not even fit to become dog catchers, but they are in the house. And these are the people, just imagine, you have contract lawyers from great universities from around the world representing multinational corporations. And these people sit across the table from some of our representatives for a contract for Liberia. 99.99% of the time, Liberia will get the short end of the stick. This is why you don't just put people in those positions. Those positions must be reserved for the best and brightest among of people who are prepared to occupy those positions. And we have to quantify it.
Mr. Dualu, you listed a lot of things, right? And you and I know no one person will possess all of those attributes. Can you rank them in any order to say, well, at least if you get 5 of these, and which one will be at the top of your ranking?
Well, the top of the ranking, if it sounds a little vague, foundational preparedness. And let me explain what that means. Foundational preparedness. I'll give you an example. In most responsible countries in the world, people will start, for example, in the representative's office as a clerk. He or she learned the trade of legislation. He or she learns. Sometimes they're a lawyer before they get there. They run for coffee. They sit in boardrooms, and these people will listen in on how meetings are conducted. That will take you 3 to 5 years in many instances. And maybe they will run for local council seat, for example. And then over time, he or she run for a district because they're already an attorney. And then they develop the diplomatic skill and the governmental skill to run an entity. Some of them run organizations in the private sector. And then over time, they develop the skill, but they have that foundation of preparedness. Now, Jai says one person cannot possess all the skills. That's not true. Now, I'm going to pose the question to you before I can answer the question. Name a skill in there that you think somebody cannot possess all of them. Because I could point to Liberians that possess those skills, but there's not Liberians that will be considered for the position. The reason being is our people gravitate towards this. I hate the tribalism thing, but it is an easier way to go because in many instances, that man been here with us. Yes, he been here with you, but is he prepared to occupy this position and change the conditions in this environment? So there are countless professional Liberians around the world. Yet you may not say, I may not 100% meet every trait, but we are talking at a considerable level. So let me give an example. The person must be able to articulate the vision. The person must understand how the modern world works. The person must understand governance. The person must understand the issue of law and security. You don't have to be a lawyer. The person must be well-read. The person must understand the family unit and how crucial it is to build a society. The person must understand our judicial system. The person must understand the vision and where Liberia is going to go. The person must understand the budgeting process. I understand everything I just presented. You see myself as an example.
And you've been married to one woman.
For 20 years. With 3 kids.
So Mr. Dualu, so now, based on what you've said, let's look in our sub-region if we can find an example. Or even in Africa, let's look at any country where your guidelines has worked or can be used as a standard to say, okay, this president was successful and this is how much of Dualu's prescription that he has?
Well, I would name you a few. If you get, I hate to use the Western world because their standards, when they were developing, we were so far behind in many instances. Now, I'm gonna put this disclaimer out because sometimes people try to find things that break up the argument, not the solution that is being proposed. Now, any official, anybody who attains certain level of leadership, especially at the president level, there are some mistakes that were made. As long as those mistakes do not involve you killing people and doing other things. I'll give you an example. When Jerry Rawlings took over Ghana, for example, I will give you a few people and just go very briefly some of the things they did. What they did was, and you have to read a paper that I wrote also. It's called Restart Liberia and Build a New Foundation. You got to Google this article and read this paper. What he did was he realized Ghana was shaky because they had not established a foundational thing. And what Jerry Rawlings did was, it was very, very ingenious. He came in, dismantled the system, and reconstructed the system based on a foundation of economics and good governance. Even though his approach, in many instances, we got to understand something. When you are a leader of highly illiterate population that is very poor, you cannot set the same standards that you will have in Norway or Sweden or in America or elsewhere. There are certain things you would do may not align. The Chinese are a beautiful example. China wants to develop. There are certain human rights things they would do. I'm not telling you go kill people, but what I'm telling you is there are certain things. Paul Kagame is a beautiful example. I want to read something that I kind of put down what Paul Kagame did in Rwanda. You know, we talk about all the development.
Assume before you get to Paul Kagame, I see you mentioned Rawlings right next door.
Yeah.
Rawlings was not a legal scholar, a philosopher, a social and developmental economist. He was not an environmentalist. He was not well read. He was poor.
No. I will stop you right there.
He was poor, and also morally, I don't think he was married to one woman. I think he had children everywhere.
Yes, but that's why I tell you in the disclaimer, do not judge a person by an individual thing here. Rawlings was a flight lieutenant. He was well read. So let's forget about that one. Okay.
No, well, flight lieutenant meaning he's well read.
No, well, in many instances, you read a lot of stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean there are certain level when you get there, you've read enough, especially if you can execute at that level. So let's forget about the reading portion. Go to some of his old tip. Listen to him. He was well versed in understanding global affairs. He knew where Africa was and where
he learned that on the job.
Well, he learned that on the job because he had a foundation of preparedness. You see, what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be 100%. What was the next thing you pointed out that he didn't have? He was not a what? He was not well read.
A legal scholar.
Well, when I'm saying a legal scholar, it goes by, in essence, this person must be a well-rounded individual. And you cannot argue to the contrary that Rawlings was a well-rounded individual. Paul Kagame, he's well-rounded. Michael Foley, other times in there, were well-rounded. But I want to point you to a guy out of Botswana, the founding father of Botswana. Okay? His name was Sarah C. Kama. This guy, he went to school in Britain. I think he got to marry a white woman when he came back to Botswana. He realized after the King independence, I believe around 1966, he knew his country was very poor. In fact, when he took over, the per capita income in this country was like $150. Basically, what that means is the average person in that country make about $150 per year. In Liberia, it's approximately $650 per year. That's our per capita income in the country. He set up Botswana. He laid the foundation for the institutions to govern the country. The same thing that Kagame is doing now. You're not going to get everything entirely, but there are certain things you can do. Foundational preparedness. You got to read the article, Restart Liberia and Build a New Foundation. It doesn't mean literally go and go restart Liberia, but you have to run the country with institutions. The way Liberia is being run, they're being run by men who understand nothing about leadership in many instances because they have not found that foundational grounding. Then I'll pose the question. Let's have the conversation. Who in the Liberian government that you think have the leadership skills in the position they currently occupy at a very high level? I couldn't think of nobody. If you can help me out.
No, and we'll come to that Liberian government and use your measure to kind of analyze it. But let's look at our past leaders, you know, and we can start as late as maybe Barclay all the way to Weah. If you can rank them, you know, against your measures.
Well, I have not really sat down to think about it. The only person, because for me, I believe somebody who went through the ranks that meet those measures that I lay out. If you put aside the ostracers, where the ostracized the rest of us who have quote unquote they didn't fit into the American or Liberian mold. I believe Torber met those requirements, and I believe he could have done a whole lot more, but he was within the system, and it was slow, it was gradual. So I said, Torber, now you have to understand, most of the Liberian presidents, there's not a lot of literature on them that we can go back and read the documentation to actually give them a fair measurement where they fit in. However, if you look at the country condition, you can say that they almost nothing to develop the country, especially from the years of 1950 all the way. See, when the Lamcos came, when the Bowmans came, when Liberia was literally in the position to develop and surpass most of the countries in the world. When we were on par with the likes of Japan, most of the resources were squandered by those that were in power. So I'm not going to rank them until all the way up to Torber, where we get some literature and say, listen, this is what Torber's intention. He was moving the country in the right direction before he got killed. So so I cannot rank them to say per se. It was something I have to sit down, go through a lot of documents to do that.
Yeah, because they all, and I don't want to shift the discussion in a different place.
Yep.
This whole thing about Torber, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he was assassinated, but he was there for 9 years.
Yep.
He still presided over an oligarchy.
Correct.
No election, one-party state, and all that. So I really don't see him in that light. But I don't want to take the discussion in a different place.
I understand.
So, let's look at 2017 slew of candidates.
Yep.
Right. Even what produced the president we have now.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say if you look at your measures and look at what we have now and in the entire 2017, will you say there was someone who there had most of these characteristics, but we didn't pick them or something of that nature?
There was a guy called, I believe his name was Sano or Cindy, Dr. Cindy.
Yeah.
Okay. Those kind of people, because they were not entirely based in Liberia, they would not be considered. Even though he had the potential to truly transform the country. Because the reason why I say that, when people have these benchmarks in their lives, look, we live in this country. When you reach a certain level, there are certain things you have to do to get to that level. Sometimes I hear people make the argument, and I'm not a Cummings fan, I'm not any official fan. I only support ideas. I don't support an individual. So, and when say, oh, Cummings ran Coca-Cola, so they may not know about governance, I laugh. Because when you say that, you don't understand the issue of governance. You don't understand how corporate life works in the West. It's highly governmental. It's highly structured. It's run in many instances, like government with institutions and departments, etc. So when you're functioning at a certain level, you acquire certain skills that is transferable, not just to governance space, but to any kind of space that you want to transfer that skill. Now, you can make the argument and say, well, maybe he doesn't have a relatable understanding to conditions on the ground, but that's something when you surround yourself with the proper lieutenants, those can come to bear. So we have to make the argument both ways.
And so stating on 2017 election, because it's both ways, right? The voters must be able to ask the right question, because you say, hey, don't vote for anyone who didn't give you this, right? At the same time, the candidates too, maybe they are playing to the voters because it's not required. I'll give you an example of one of the speeches or one of the campaign things that we voted on in the last election. And not to take a jab at anyone, but I want you to take a listen. So if this become what a presidential candidate say, and I'm not saying this was entirely why the person was voted or not voted for, but take a listen and give me your feedback based on your measures.
This country is not about education. It's about what the Liberian people needs. Our needs and wants. The leader that can provide for all the best breeds, look at your homes, look at your villages. You are living in huts. A book and English can develop country. Liberia is supposed to be the best country in the world. This country.
If book and education could develop country, Liberia could be the best country in the world. That's the message. That's one of the messages that won George Weah the presidency.
Well, in the same sentence, that President Weah suggests that book is not important, it's where book was so important, what the people needs and wants. But let me just digress from that for a little bit. President Weah, and you make a valid point. Sometimes the politician play to the gullibility of our people, and I get that. But we have to change that. This is why papers like this will keep coming up, because we have to change that. President Weah could not articulate any vision to the country. You know, one time I don't blame President Weah for some of the stuff he does, because he didn't tell Liberian people what he was going to do. He didn't tell them anything, and they accepted this. People cannot vote on feelings. They have to vote on reciprocation. What is this person's capability to deliver what I need in my community? Does President Weah possess that capability? Has he actualized that capability in the past, in an organization, in a governmental entity, anywhere? Has he done that? The answer is unequivocal no, he has not done that. You give him a position that he does not understand in many instances, you set him up for failure. The entire country suffers because of this. So the issue is, yes, they play to the gullibility of the people, but by the same token, our government checking institutions, if we have any, such as the elections commissions or such as the civil service organizations in the country, like Bureau Councils of Churches, the Muslim organization, we have to demand, people who know better have to demand from these people. This is why people like this will be coming out and say, listen, what is a vision to the country? If you run away from these debates, if you cannot come here and articulate these visions, how you're going to actualize these visions, we're not going to consider it.
Mr. Dualu, these things are not required. Okay, voters not looking for them, candidates are not expressing them. So what do we do? How do we fix this kind of issue?
We fix it by starting conversations like this, by talking to our people. So listen, it is okay to want to vote for your son, but has your son met the tenets? Look, let me use this analogy. You have a daughter that you'll prepare your entire life to make sure she live a decent life. And some guy who has done nothing in his life, he's careless, he's on drugs, he's all over the place, he comes and asks for your daughter's hand in marriage. Is that something you're going to consider? We have to dumb it down so our people, and people should not misconstrue it, because, you know, sometimes you read a comment, people will take one thing out of context and say, oh, but the person was not a scholar. No, the point I'm trying to make is there must be a well-roundedness to this person. So you have to set a standard for everything you do. And we have to begin setting those standards. This is my argument. It doesn't mean the person going to be an angel. That's not my argument. My argument is there are certain things society should tolerate. And if we don't set those standards for society to tolerate, we will elect anybody. And that anybody is not going to deliver the results that the country needs.
Mr. Dualu, you are writing this paper, right? What are some of the practical steps to follow through? Because someone reading this in Dodweekend or in Feasible or even in Barnasby will say the article will eat.
Correct. And these are some of the questions they will ask that to which you respond, know that not where you will eat. That article will begin your food putting on the table, your job creation process. Yes, by extension, that's article you will eat. Because until he or she down, this is where somebody from Dualu who has a son who's going to LU, he or she will take such an article, take it to Dualu and read it to his people and explain it to his people. These are the requirements. It's not one person thing. Look, Nigeria has a very great model that they've been utilizing, I don't know for how long now, but I know probably like 20 years. They call it national service. Before you graduate from the local university, you have to go to the interior and do national service. And the reason for that national service is to extend that education to the rest of the country. We have to begin such a process in Liberia to educate our people on what is required in a leader in order for that leader to succeed.
Thank you. If you are here watching, this is Focus on Liberia. We are in conversation with Mr. Ansu Dualu. He has written an article that got him in trouble, and that's why he's here. The article is A Guide to Picking Liberia's Next President. So if you want to be a part of the discussion, please call. The number is on your screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403. My last question before we go to our comments and calls, you stressed in the article, and I want to read this. You said, the presidency is not a joking matter. People's lives are dependent on the decision he or she makes, right? So let's look. I want this is going to be your show and tell moment. I know you got kids in grade school that used to take things to school for show and tell. So let's look at our current president and tell about his decisions and what the impact has been based on what you've just said. Because you said the decision the president makes will make or break the country. So let's look at President Weah. Anything comes to mind has to his decision and the impact it has been.
Well, look at the country. Look at the country. Look what has happened to the country. We are literally in reverse. But you see, I'm a kind of person. I don't just like to come out and say, "Oh, this is it. This is that." I love to give you results of decisions that have been made, and you make your own decision. Say, "Oh, why is this?" And I'm going to rate the We Are government on four platforms. The first thing is rule of law. Second thing is government SaaS. The third thing is regulatory efficiency. And the fourth thing is government perception and reality on the ground. Let's look at the rule of law. Is the judiciary weak in Liberia? I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to pose those questions and people can respond to them. Okay? Is there pervasive corruption in the country? Precarious security issues in the country? Is the government functioning? Are the institutions of government functioning as they were designed? Is the government size small enough to be able to do the tenets of government, to be able to do what the government wants? Are the institutions functioning properly? Can I go and get a passport today? Can I call a police officer and the police officer come on time? Can I go to the hospital and say, this hospital can serve me if I'm sick? Can I do that in Liberia? I'm not going to do that. What are the regulatory efficiencies in the country? Can I start a business and make sure that business is protected? Can I put my money in the bank and my money be protected in the banking sector? Can I have trust in the system under the We Are administration? What is the local perception of governance in the country? If all of these are positive, then George Weah is doing excellent. This is not political. This is reality. And there are things that we have to measure. Given the decision that President Weah has made, let me tell you something. One of the most important things of a leader, is very important, is the vision, his influence, and how he guides that influence upon the people. Remember, when I first began this show, I said something. A leader of a country, one of the three most important things he has to consider is the economic viability of the country, the social and urban mobility of his citizenry, and the security issues in the country. What is his vision towards that? How well is President Weah articulating that vision? Does he speak to his people frequently to tell them, to listen, this is what I'm doing, this is why I did it? When we have crisis in the country, does he address the country? Does he subside? Does he come and tell the people, say, listen, this is what we are doing. This is why we are putting this road here. This is why we built 5 housing units in this location as opposed to this location. Is he being relatable to the people? These are the questions.
And Mr. Dualu, why you think that is not happening? Is it if you look at your measures in your article, why you think those things are not happening? Is it because not a legal scholar?
It's very simple. It's very simple, Jack. President Weah does not have the foundation of preparedness to govern. He doesn't. He's never has. In fact, when I listen to President Weah sometimes or look at him, I don't think he ever wanted to become president. I think he was forced into the position. He does not understand the awesomeness of that position, or the magnitude, the gravity of what is required to run a country. He didn't understand it. He could not, in fact, even up to now, I don't think he fully comprehends it.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to take some calls and read our comments. Welcome back. You are watching Focus on Liberia. Our topic, a guide to picking Liberia's next president. The author of that article is Mr. Ansu Dualu, and he's my guest tonight. We are discussing that article. This is our Independence Day weekend. If you are just joining us, we say happy 26. before I get our first caller, this one is for you from Gakom Moe. He said, laugh out loud. I like when those so-called experts talk. Ansu, can you name the country or organization you successfully ran? Your response.
What's his name? Moe District, right? I believe that was his name.
Yeah, his actual name is Gakom Moe.
Oh, Gakom Moe. I hope you can speak Basa because I wish I could translate into Basa. But I'll tell you this, Moe. You don't have to run a country before you can speak on the governance of a country. Most people that write developmental economic books, how to improve the conditions of those countries, do not run those countries. They're experts in the field. They understand the intricacies of government. They give recommendations. The recommendations are meant to improve the conditions on the ground. But yes, I've run organizations. I've ran my own business for over 10 years. I've led men. I was president sitting in the CM capacity role at a major multi-billion-dollar American firm. So I understand leadership. I've been in leadership role for many, many years. You don't have to run a country better. The issue is recommendations. Now, if you have a better recommendation, we encourage you to write one so we can read as well and listen to you. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you. Anthony Kofa says, saying it is easy, but we had our so-called economists who led the country for 12 years and nothing happened. Anthony Gay said it's a great show. Amara scientist Kamara agree. Wilton Kerto said, Mr. Jack, give Dualu a platform to just talk empty talk. Wilton, I hope you call in so you can tell which one is the empty talk.
Thank you.
Amara also said the brother is making a lot of sense. Let's take our first caller. Caller, if you're there, your name and where you're calling from.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jack. This is Tower Johnson. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Mr. Johnson,
United States.
Welcome and happy July 26th.
Same to you, Mr. Jack. And to Senate. See if you're there today. How you doing, the guests? I really enjoy
How you doing, brother? How you doing?
We have the mind like you, brother, to go back to our country and build our country. We all can do it. I've been following you a lot. You always call on the spoon talk. And you always bring your ideas. And one thing you said that is very, very good. You said that all your thing you can do. You know how to bring your money to Liberia. You know what we can do in our economy. Don't listen to people, brother. My question to you, brother, is do you ever approach Summit Tour to bring all these great ideas that you have been putting forth? And if you have a time to sit with Opon and Summit Tour, what would be the first thing will you do? Tell them that you can be able to change Liberia economy right now. Because right now, the only thing that's suffering George Weah government is the economy. If the economy can change around, George Weah will win come 2023. And anybody can change Liberia economy right now, it will be the next president for our country. So my question to you, brother, do you ever sit down with Summit Tour and George Manning Weah that you can pull for the idea? We have a great idea, brother. I've been following you for a long time. You speak something that is truth. And you said something. We shouldn't take our strength and make it with the Western world strength. We should go by what we have in our country, our people. We have the youth. Sometimes you said the road that is rare by in the sub region, we can use rocks. You said even cassava. You said a lot of good things. And I pray that you talk to Summit Tour and bring the full idea and God can be prosperous and Liberia can go better. So I listen to you, brother. Don't listen to the hater, man. They do all that thing from our country being born.
Thank you.
Always put for your ideas.
John, before you take the next call, I want to answer this, brother, because you asked a great question.
Yeah,
give me 1 minute. You know, I'm a fast talker. Brother, the answer to that is yes. I met Summit Tour one-on-one. We spoke for about an hour. In fact, after that meeting, I put together a paper, and I want you to Google that paper. It's called Leveraging Liberia's Resources to Live the Pro-Poor Agenda. I wrote that paper specifically because Summit Tour wanted to see how we can improve the conditions in the country. So I wrote that paper, and I gave it to him personally. In your hand, I gave it to him. I emailed it to him. I still have all the records to that. So we've given recommendations, and I would go here and say, take some of these recommendations. Don't take them, but at least improve the conditions in the country. So yes, I've met them, and I've given them what I can give them, but that's all we can do.
Thank you. Let me take our next caller. 203 area code. Your name and where you calling from?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is John Knapp, and I'm calling from Connecticut in the U.S.
John, go ahead. Welcome and happy 26th.
Oh, happy 26th to you both also.
Thank you.
I just enjoyed the conversation that you guys were having, and some of the points that Mr. Ansu was making. A lot of good points, a lot of good suggestions. I always think, like, you know, we function a lot on, you know, a cult of personality in Liberia. You know, we're always looking for the next great guy to come to fix everything. But, you know, my personal opinion is it appears that, you know, we're probably lacking a system that can hold people accountable from, you know, the top straight down to the bottom. And that might probably take something in the vein of, you guys mentioned Jerry Rawlings. You know, when he came to power, some of the ways that he was able to get things moving and going was by forming committees of people that consisted from the highest ranking people to the lower people, like market people. And those committees, even though there was tension between them, but they were able to help to push forward the nation in, you know, kind of like a check and balance system. And I think, you know, the next president that's elected, you know, with all the good heart and love for Liberia, I think without, as, you know, leaders, these people being able to sit down together and form some kind of, later on after you elect a president, to form some kind of group among all the different contesting parties that, you know, it's kind of like a committee that's an internal, you know, accountability mechanism. And we can also have a third party from outside the country. You know, it could be, you know, the African economic system. It could be the World Bank economic system. These check and balances are what I think in the end will help to foster and push forward some of the agendas that we talk about, that you guys have been talking about. But, you know, so far it just appears that the change of faces on the national scene for President Day Liberia just doesn't seem to bring the kind of development that we're thinking about. Because each group that talks about this from the outside, we have all the answers. As soon as we gain access to the inside and to the leverages of power, all of a sudden the vision, the favor, all the knowledge we had about how to make Liberia great just disappears and just becomes, you know, picking all the little berries and cherries out of the country and pocketing it, and, you know, corruption, everything runs rampant again. So, you know, that, you know, personally, that was my point. You know, I think Mr. Ansu has some very great suggestions, and his ideas are great. But I think, you know, again, forming some kind of body system within the country and also having some kind of external accountability system, it might not be forever, but for some time being, to hold, you know, our country in a state of accountability, check and balances is proud to me the way it can move forward.
But not before I let you go. So where do you think that accountability system will come from?
Well, like I said, it could be internal if our leaders are wise enough.
Okay.
Like we go through this next election cycle, and if our leaders, whether it's the Cummings, you know, all the different people vying for power, after that is done, can agree to sit down and form, you know, some kind of committee or a group.
Okay, I got you.
Will take the you know, the economic policies, the social policies of the country as they've been implemented, the loans that come into the country as those loans are disbursed and as they've been executed for developmental purposes, to look at the way they're executed, the results, and, you know, if those, you know, the goals are attained, and if they're not attained, you know, to have a check and balance, to be able to go back to the leaders and say, no, this is not what we expected, you know, and to be able to continue to hold people accountable. I think the accountability part that we lack, and that makes it easy for people to just take advantage of, you know, of
those loopholes,
the finances of the country, take advantage of the political situation, and continue to foster poverty among the poor people who continue, and they have no choice but to continue to vote for people who continue to poke fingers in their eye. You know, and I think, you know, look at, you know, all the slums that we know in Liberia. From all the government that we know in this country, with the executive mansion sitting where it sits, overlooking those slums, there's been no change. You know, those people see the conditions of the people every day. You would think that when they get to power, you know, after saying all this thing about poverty of Liberia and all the loans and my financial, you know, wherewithal that we gather for the country, that those would be some of the priorities to change the living conditions of the people in West Point, in Slipway. But this just continues to perpetuate the poverty of those people, because that's the poverty that continues to give them the chance to pretend like they're
exactly
and they're doing something for it. And it's not happening.
Thank you.
So I think it's the accountability portion that we need.
Thank you. And so before you come in, you talk about, you know, that the current president lacked that foundational preparedness. And then we also see you give example of Alexander Cummings, who said, I'm going to raise 500 million budget to 1 billion, but yet cannot tell us how. And it is not just Cummings. Almost all our candidates, the one we know now vying, the last election, Kennedy Bwaka said, roll, without telling us how.
Yeah.
Are we doomed? The current president is not doing it.
We're not doomed. We're not doomed. This brother, John, that just left the line, he did say something. Look, he said when people come to power, they lose the vision that they had before they came to power. That's not entirely true. They still have the vision, but this is what's going on. We deify whoever sits in the presidency. And once that person becomes deified, you got to understand in Liberia, we have no other alternative besides government job. There is no true private sector. In fact, most people in government cannot make more than $300 a month in the private sector in Liberia. They don't have the capability to make that kind of money. So they cling to government job. The reason why their visions are buried, they don't forget their vision, because the leadership. That is why I push. Look, I firmly believe the legislature has no power in Liberia to change anything. Nobody does. The singular person that can change the conditions in Liberia is the presidency. If President Weah truly wants to actualize, to form a new government and say, listen, we will truly follow the Constitution and the visions that can be actualized to change the socio-economic conditions in the country. It can happen tomorrow. He can pass any bill in 2 days, in 1 day, because this is Liberia. This is how it is. We have a supreme presidency. It can be changed. There is nothing, no barriers are there. We don't have a constitution. We have the presidency. This is why it's so crucially important to have a person who understands this. You know, I was reading some of the comments. Somebody said, oh, I hope Mr. Dualu mentioned that the person must understand Liberian condition. Relatable understanding. This is what this implies. This person must truly understand the plight of the people. And the one way he or she can do that, he has to be able to articulate that. So if I went to Bapalu County, I don't have to speak the local dialect. I can go to Bapalu if I understand the conditions, and that condition can be articulated. Look, like I said, rules. You know, I will ask people, Google the article. Don't just listen to the show. I encourage you, Google a guide to picking Liberia's next president. And the most recent article, I believe it's still on Front Page Africa. It was published in Tanzania. Actually, raising Liberia budget from 500 million to 2 billion. It was published in Ghana. It was published in Gambia. Google the paper. A guide to increasing Liberia's national budget from $500 million to $2 billion. Within the confines of that, I show you how you can literally make every road in Liberia pliable year-round without having breakage on the road. And there are ways you can do it with our current budget. You have to find these solutions within the confines. So we are not criticizing somebody. We are recommending solutions. And sometimes when you present these solutions, people take it as a job. You know, in Liberia job, if I'm the director of a facility, I'm supposed to be the most educated person and the biggest man in our facility. My directors have to be dumber than me. This is lunacy. Every department that I've run or any smart person runs, people underneath you must be smarter than you. It makes you look better. And this is why we are pushing for the elevation of having a viable candidate that has these traits, that we can say this person has a transformative, an influencer, a person with a vision, a person with connection, a person that can truly do this. But they should have done that before. It's that important.
Thank you. Let me go back to some of our comments. This one for Miata Stella Herring. Brother, even if you take it to the village, there are standards and procedures. A person in the village must possess self-awareness. A good community leader should be knowledgeable of his or her strengths and weaknesses. Eagerness to learn and adapt. As a community leader, earning respect from members is one of the key enablers of one's empathy, honesty, and integrity, dedication, service, interpersonal skill, forward thinking. I think Miata is agreeing with you here that besides the president, even in the village, those things are still needed.
Exactly.
Admiral K. Salif, it's a great read. He read the article. In fact, I shared with him before the show. It's a great read, not because the author has mystery of his prose or that is well-written work, but that the paper articulates high level of thinking in terms of ideals in advances and the advances. It advances the careful documentation of requirements of the mega leadership of the task of the presidency. So I agree that there should be systematic scrutiny of the person whom puts themselves forward for high office. However, the author also makes unrealistic assumptions about the Liberian society and Liberia. And I think what Ahmed is talking to there is the assumption is, we have a voter that's able to sift through this, but I'll let you respond.
Yeah. Ahmed is right. Now that I assume wrong, this is why, because the vision is a little bit aggressive. I'm not assuming wrong. I understand his point and it's valid, but this is where the task comes in for us all to begin that education process. To begin the education, I talk about the national service that's happening in Nigeria, and I talk about these issues. I understand, and Ahmed is absolutely right. And these assumptions, I did that intentionally to go ahead and say, you know what, Ron? Now, Chokon from number 2 compound, Grand Bassa County, goes to LU, take the paper, take it to your village, and explain this paper to your people. We have a massive amount of education to do in the country for people to understand the requirements of leadership.
Amba Ladi say, Happy Independence Day, Mama Liberia. God bless our land. Thanks, FOL team. Mr. Dualu, you have made some great points, but you and I understand well that the way forward is institutional leadership. Let not fool ourselves. The downfall of any administration is the lack of knowledge. You need quality human resource capability to be able to successfully make a change.
She's right. But this is why, you cannot capture everything in one paper. And this is why we continue to push and write these papers in stages. We move forward. But I would say to the sister, let her Google Common Sense Economics. It focuses on institutional governance. It is something I've been saying for over 10 years. This is the approach to change the trajectory in Liberia. We cannot have the big menism being perpetuated throughout the country. It has to be institutionalized. Our governance process, I agree with her, should be heavily institutionalized. But I did not incorporate it into this paper because you can't put everything in one paper. But you can Google Common Sense Economics for Liberia. It talks about institutional governance.
Almeke Shalif II, the author or your guest seem to be making a different argument than made in this article. As Kagame wasn't well polished, neither well read. Kagame has a solid human rights and rule of law records. Yes, he's advancing economic governance. This guy's a former warlord. That's what he's trying to say.
Okay,
Emmanuel,
oh, go ahead.
Emmanuel Jackson, Rawling and wife went to the best grammar schools in Ghana. Rawling was highly educated. The military school are world-class in Ghana. Amara V. Toure, I like Mr. Dualu's foundational preparedness. It sets a standard to look for in a person. Unfortunately, the current standard is a mess. Anyone can be Liberian president under the current standard. Matthew Josh is loving here. Miata Sterling. This tell you that George Weah and the people he's speaking to are illiterate. They do not know, nor understand, or comprehend the value of education because he's not educated. Football is an extracurricular activity. Yeah, this is the one he said. I hope Mr. Dualu had included in his paper that the future president must know the people and the people must know him. He should not say away and only appear when they want to become president.
Yep.
Benjamin Sowase, you are right. Weah was forced by his followers to become president because he's not prepared at all. What kind of president we got who cannot speak to his people? No press conference, nothing. Ford Morrison said, you guys are going personal. Please stick to the topic. I don't know who exactly. Can't we say comment from Mr. Mowell, Anthony Kofa, and their likes illustrate how convoluted it is to get the right people into power to provide better governance. Let me read a few more comments here. This one from Munrag Medikle. Politicians have over the years carefully crafted cynical plans to keep our people illiterate and poor. So most Liberians don't know what to ask who be leaders during elections, and this paves the way for irresponsible and inept people to ascend to leadership. Your comment, Ansu.
Well, and I want to make this comment, and I'm going to stress this comment. I've been stressing it. If I haven't, I apologize for this. This is not about education, formal education, as we know it. I'm not talking about degrees here. Now, I want to make that very, very distinctive point. And I don't want people stressing and say, oh, the man said you got to get 15 PhD to be president. This is not what I'm saying. In fact, I firmly believe everything you need to know, you can learn through high school and make a great president for Liberia. However, when the presidency, because it's just such an awesome responsibility, you have to understand certain things at a very high level, especially now in the 21st century. You have to know a lot of things. You have to read extensively. You have to understand. I don't care if people say, oh, we have an economist at the helm. You have to understand the output of President Eli compared to the output of President George Weah. People say, oh, the man wearing roof houses in Gibraltar. And, I shake my head. I say, hey, my God, we have a lot of work to do. This is a country. Gibraltar is less than freaking 2 acres. People have to understand there are issues here. The education I'm talking about is a person that can articulate a vision, not just here at home, but abroad. Can he or she go abroad and convincingly present Liberia's case to the rest of the world? And then those people can listen to he or she and say, listen, this person is making this position for their country. Can they do that publicly and convince a bunch of people? This is what the issue we're talking about. We're not living in a vacuum. Liberia, we depend on a lot of international help. I believe it should not be the case, because if we run our resources properly, we don't need international help. And that is covered in another article that was published. And people have to understand some of these issues. But we need a person that understands the intricacies of government in the global sphere. That's what we are pushing for. And when we say education, that's what we mean. Not going to get plenty degree. Let's make that distinction. I want to be clear about it. A lot of people, some things I said, you don't have to agree with everything, my people. But let's talk and take the good one. If some bad one inside, let's throw away. Take the good one, find a way to take those good ones to our people and promote those good ones for the elevation of Liberia. And that's my entire intent.
You have a cousin here. He said, my cousin Ansu is an asset to Liberia. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, my cousin, honest hand. How you doing, man?
Anthony Cooper says, stop your lies, cause Liberia was a mess, nasty and dirty. Ellen took office 2005, 2017. I went to Liberia in August. Ellen last year, and I shared tears. Liberia was dark and nasty. Anthony, I think you're missing the point here. Yeah, how can we pick our next president? Ellen is gone. John Conway, the accountability will have to come from both the impoverished voters who continue to sell their souls to give power to the worst sets of their kind that go on to further impoverish everyone.
Anthony, before you go, that question is very important. We got to answer that question. I'm begging you.
Yeah, go ahead.
The voters are put in a position in many cases where they're extremely vulnerable. There was a paper that I published, and people can read it. It's called How to Raise $1 Billion for Liberians in the Diaspora. And the whole gist of this paper is called Why Should I Invest into Liberia? Why should I invest my money into Liberia? That's it. That's the article. You can Google it. Raising $1 billion for Liberia. And one of the things I propose in the article is we Liberians in the diaspora, if we each can raise $1,000 from our pocket, it's not free money. This go to an investor bank here in America. This will be Insure FDIC, Insure incorporated with an investment bank. We use that money, go to Liberia, establish diaspora corporation. We build a hydropower plant. We establish industry, provide jobs for our people. When you start doing that, our people will not fall so easily for some of these politicians, because now they can feed themselves. The reason why our people vote in that manner, in many instances, they cannot feed themselves, and they're just looking for the next meal. So if we come up with methods, ways to improve the system, create jobs all over the country, $1 billion. We in the diaspora, approximately 1 million Liberians living in the diaspora. If they each all put 1,000, and that's a bond. That's not free money. You'll get interest on your $1,000. It goes to an investment bank here. We use that $1 billion to invest into Liberia. We can create jobs. Now we can influence our people into voting in the right direction. But what people ain't get job. So anybody comes, they're going to take them. This is why we put out these recommendations. We are not downplaying anybody. We are finding solution.
Amara Scientist Kamara, thanks, Brother Ansu, for coming to share your knowledge with us on this platform. It may be difficult for our typical Liberian society to accept this manner of voting for the presidency in your paper, but just keep pushing until Liberians can see the realistic to follow you. Thank you for coming. Dave Jai here, he disagreed with me. He said, no, Dennis, Comey has some basic knowledge and understanding of the economy. He could be better than we are. This is not outlandish. And Dave, what I was saying was, Comey did not tell us how he's going to raise the $1 billion.
Well, read it to me. Anybody who believes Honorable Comey does not have the capability to govern Liberia, I say you're out of your mind. He does have it. There is no argument to the contrary. However, because of the mistakes we've made in the past, we cannot cut anybody a slack. It is the point we're trying to make here. I want people to get the point. It is not about education. It's about setting standards. It is not about what a person says. It's how that person is going to do it. Let he or she tell us publicly so we can scrutinize it. It is not about how the people vote. It's how we address our people and how to vote in the right directions. It's about setting standards for our leadership in the country. That's the points we're trying to make here. And I hope people understand that.
All right. Son, when educated Liberians are getting broke around the world, they ran to Liberia. Cummings has returned broke again. I don't know where that is coming from.
Well, I'll be answer that very quickly. First of all, I think Cummings is worth close to $80-90 million. He can Google this. This is public record, my brother. And in many instances, yes, there are some people that run to Liberia. Let me say this to you. Most people that run for government jobs in Liberia, most of those people are the people that are not doing the best in the West. But most people are doing great. They don't run to Liberia easily for job. So you sometimes got to look at the record, and you cannot lump everybody into one lump sum. Cummings a multi-millionaire. The man can afford to live anywhere in the world. Okay? But for me personally, like I said to young people that I talk to, don't support an individual. Support his vision and his ideas. So that way, support the ideas. Don't support George Weah. Support George Weah's vision and his ideas. But when you deify a man, he thinks he becomes infallible. And this is the issue we are facing in the country right now.
Mianta said you keep talking about, you're not talking about education, but this means one has to go to school. So I don't understand why you keep saying you are not talking about formal education. Of course you are.
We are talking about formal education. The point I was trying to make sense, Mianta, is this. I'm not talking about, because people like to equate degree with everything in Liberia. My point was, it's not about degree. Of course, you have to know how to read and write. But I'm not stressing education. I'm stressing education in terms of running organizations, that kind of education, running institutions, understanding how the governing process works. Yes, they require formal education, but I don't want the focus to be on degrees.
And what's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with degree, but sometimes it takes away from the argument. The boys say, the message must get 50 degree before you can run. No, that's not the point. I want the focus to be on education in the formal or informal sense that holistically makes the point and actualizes the vision. That's what I'm focusing on, not necessarily the degree.
Honestly, Mr. Dualu, your article, I like it, appeals to me. But, I'm educated. I'm in America, so I can afford to read it. But to the average person in Liberia, what does this mean? And what can you do different? You've been writing these articles, common sense, for how long now? 10 years?
Yeah.
And what has the impact been? And what are you going to do differently?
You said a great thing. There was a guy during the American Revolution, and let me be clear, Liberian people will take the negative. I am not likening myself to Thomas Paine or anybody else. Do you know how many articles he wrote before he wrote Common Sense? So sometimes you write, and yet we're talking about a guy to picking Liberia's next president. Sometimes you write, and those articles are documented. They're out there. Somebody could read them one day. not just the first article somebody will read and go ahead and say, oh, we're going to do this. So sometimes you keep writing. A lot of time people write books. Sometimes they don't make a hit, maybe to the 10th book. Even you, John, you wrote a book. Most people don't even know you wrote a book. And I read a book, by the way. I still have it.
Mr. Dualu, we have people running for president now. You know, and you have this guy. What can you tell Liberians about the people that are running? How do they fit your guy? Let's start with Mr. Bwaka, then we go to Mr. Cummins, then we go to what's the other guy name? They call him like ATM.
John, now you're gonna spoil the whole show and get me in trouble.
Well, no, I mean, but we got to talk practical stuff.
No,
here.
we will talk about it. Our country will talk about it. Look, I'm a firm believer, and see, I'm a numbers guy. So sometimes when I'm talking, I attach number to my argument and my rationale. Close to 70% of Liberia's population is under the age of 40. Okay, most of whom would die before the age of 60, because the life expectancy in Liberia hovers around 57 to 65 years old. So most of our people die early. And we have Honorable Bwaka wants to become president. He served in such capacity for many years. He's a statesman. Call him whatever you want. He has a vision for the country. But we got to ask ourselves some questions. And like I said, I will keep going by. Let people read the article. Does Honorable Bwaka has the strength to follow a bunch of 40 years old when the countries go rah-rah? We got to be realistic here.
Wait now, are you saying he got to chase people down the street?
Let me make my point. Let me make my point.
Okay.
We can have a great president that is old and he comes in, but will he serve Liberia better in an advisory capacity? Number one, is Honorable Bwaka have to become, one thing I hate about Liberian politics, if you stay so long within the confines of that governance process, you know nothing else. Do you know why most corporations and most professional teams around the world always go outside and bring a different coach? It's because they have a new, fresh eye to look at the issues that are facing the country. Maybe Mr. Bwaka could make a great president, but there are questions that must be asked. Is he the right person? Is his health going to jeopardize the sovereignty of our country, or will we face issues in the country? Some of those questions have to be asked. Okay? Yes, he's a well-read man. Yes, maybe he well-rounded. He understands the governance process. He understands the people in the country. But what are some of his vision that is out there that we can research, that he has published, that we can compare to where the country is, and what are some of the things that he's undertaking throughout the country? Talking is not sufficient for us anymore. Should a person that is 2 times the average age of almost 70% of the population be governing the country? Let's ask those questions.
But you didn't put that in your article.
I can't read everything in the article, but you got to put those things to bear. Because here's the thing. Can Honorable Bwaka understand what a 22-year-old going through in Liberia when it comes to technology? Does he understand how the school system works in Liberia? Honorable Bwaka went to school in the 50s. Does he understand what is going on in our school system? Can he comprehend what is going on in our school system? It doesn't mean but how you mean to make it comprehend? There are technology, he may not even know what's going on. The reason why people transition,
so
you want continuity.
All right. You only talk about Bwaka, you didn't talk about anybody. But let me bring
Bwaka you asked me about.
No, I asked you for all of them.
Okay, for Cummins, and amongst the guys that are in the country, Bwaka people will kill me small. I think the best person to govern Liberia right now, as it stands, if he gives me those things that we're looking for, articulate his vision and put it down on paper and let us be able to scrutinize his vision, I think Comey could change the conditions in Liberia. I think he has the best position, not electability. But let me put it this way. If Liberia truly wants to transition from our current state into something new, hopefully that new thing is in the direction, because look, Cummins does not care to some extent about money until he proves otherwise. Because we can prove beyond reasonable doubt that he has some money. There are certain things he will not care about. But another thing I like to tell people, which were not in the article too, but you understand it, you are not voting for the individual you're voting for. You're voting for the team that he has presented to you. The team has to be equally scrutinized. What is Cummins' team? Now, just because I say Cummins is in the right position, to actually change the country for the better. It doesn't mean Comey should get elected, because Comey still have a lot of questions to answer.
Right, and he has not answered those questions. So
He has not answered those questions.
So you are acting like the voters now, because
he has not answered those questions. And another thing too, you know, I read some of the comments people online, and sometimes they make fun. I mean, they try to attack the seditionists. They say, oh, they're aggressive. The communist people become very, very aggressive, and I expect someone to be very highly educated. Look, listen, if somebody counter your point, have a civil conversation. It's not attacking the individual. You know, in Liberia, we continue to deify political leaders. It is lunacy. It shouldn't be that way.
Let me take. We have the call. One more caller because we're almost out of time. So I will just bring in one caller briefly. Caller, your name again and where you calling from?
Oh, hi. It's not Mr. Jai. It's me again from Connecticut, John Nat.
Okay, 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But I just wanted to say again, Ansu mentioned that some of the people who go back home to run organizations are not, you know, what you might term the best people that leave here. And sometimes those are people who are actually failures here, who end up going back home to serve because they have no other choice. I just wanted to make a point also that when you talk about Mr. Cummings and, you know, and even Mr. Ansu himself, you know, and myself, and any of us who work outside or outside of the country, one of the things that hold us, you know, makes it possible for the performance level that we attain is that the organizations and the entities we work for have structures in place for accountability. And I'll keep going back to this, that ensure that if we're not performing at a certain level, we don't maintain positions. And so then other people who are capable come into place. How does that happen? Even if you go through all this presidential election process and elect somebody with vision, and that person comes in, who holds them accountable? What is the system in Liberia to hold that person accountable? Because you can bring Mr. Ansu, you can bring Mr. Samuel, you can bring the guy, Mr. What's the name that used to run the banking system, who have worked all over West Africa in different Southern African nations as a banking expert. But he was within a system, the World Bank system, that made him, he had to work and perform at a certain level. What happens is we get individuals that attain these positions, even with their good heart and the good designs they have. Once they get into power, there's nothing to hold them to their performance.
Yeah.
And so then they fall by everything they came in wanting to do falls by the wayside. So what I'm saying is, whether it's Mr. Ansu becomes president, if Mr. Cummings becomes president, whoever becomes president, I don't think the face changes the problem in the country. Is that person willing to work with the rest of the leadership in the country to put together some accountability structure that will make it possible for the nation to move forward? And that should include the market women, the people from the boroughs, and all stakeholders. And that's the only way we can get accountability.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right. We are almost out of time here. Tomorrow at 4, we're going to have our Independence Day celebration. Dr. K. Moses Namwe will be offering Independence Day reflection. We will have Liberians reading their poems or essays on what does Liberia mean to me. We also have videos of Liberians all over the world appearing saying what Liberia means to them. So you must tune in, and it will be at 4 o'clock. This Independence Day celebratory broadcast is made possible by our literary hour team. That's Dr. K. Moses Nanwe and Jackie Sayer. So 4 p.m. tomorrow, we're going to be having our celebration. What does Liberia mean to me? That will be the team. Mr. Ansu, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your guide to selecting the next Liberian president.
Well,
let's conclude by getting your final thoughts, and just tell me exactly how you're going to accomplish this, or you're just going to be talking to donors and all the Educated people.
Well, we're going to keep talking. John made a lot of great points. He's absolutely right. But Dennis, I have a beautiful poem for you. It's called I'm a Liberian. I will actually send it to you. I wanted to read it tomorrow as well, if you don't mind. I will call
please.
it. Yes.
Please send it to focusonliberal@gmail.com.
Okay.
And we're going to be reading those poems, and you'll be on live too to read it. I mean, It's beautiful. When I watch those videos, what Liberia means to the children, some of them are in Liberia, are living some of the worst conditions, and still they are holding on to Liberia. That really brightens my heart.
That's very good.
Happy Independence Day. And Mr. Dualu, you have 1 minute to make your closing remark.
Well, at the end of the day, it should be about Liberia. We talk not because we intend to bring anybody time, but we intend to have solutions. We will all say this. We are not here for a very long time. I continue to ask this question every show I go on. What would be our legacy to Liberia? It is okay to talk, but what impact are we going to make to the country before we leave this earth? There must be something that we have to do. You know, the brother John from Connecticut keeps stressing, look, institutional governance is the way to go. We have to stop the deification of individuals in the country. We continue to do this. It continues to hurt our country, and our people don't understand it. We have a lot of education to do. Those are people that can read this article. I'm asking you, you know, sometimes you call it attire shops in some of those places. Let's have these conversations. How to pick our leaders is so crucial, because if you don't pick the right leader, we're trying to pull round peg in square hoses. I mean, square pegs around. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. There are things we have to do, people. Leadership is very important. It is the most important thing in the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On that note, I want to say thank you, Mr. Dualu, for coming and explaining this guy. We also want to thank our viewers, those watching now and those who will watch later. And it is not also too late to give Focus on Liberia our 26 too now. So we say happy 26. And if for any reason you want to make any donation to Focus on Liberia, you can do so by going on our website or sending us a cash app and say, for all that you do, keep making this happen. We want to say thank you so much for following us always on Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, we never close our broadcast without playing the song that says, we are all Liberians. There are some people who don't even believe that Liberia is independent. Some belongs to this party or that party. Whatever your background may be, we are all Liberians, and that what counts. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.